Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Walk. Today is Monday, October 16th. We're still in Galatians 3. We're probably going to be here all week, and we are up to verses 19 through 21 today. Now, one of the important things to give you as a review is so far in Galatians 3, we've had an enormous amount of comparison between the law and trying to get our righteousness through works and behaving appropriately versus the promise and getting our salvation and our righteousness through that grace. We put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, and that overwhelming, unending supply of grace covers us and gives us that righteousness of Christ. It is not based on our works. So that brings us to verse 19, which says, "Why then the law? It was added because of transgressions, until the offspring should come to whom the promise had been made. And it was put in place through angels by an intermediary. Now an intermediary implies more than one, but God is one. Is the law then contrary to the promises of God? Certainly not. For if a law had been given that could give life, then righteousness would indeed be by the law." So as we break this down, there's a lot of meat in here, there's a lot of theology, but what purpose did the law serve? Well, its purpose was to identify sin, to say, these are the things that are acceptable in your community, these are the things that are not acceptable in the community, these are the things that you can do that will not cause distance in your relationship with God. These are the things that you shouldn't do or can't do, because they will cause separation in your relationship with God. But the important thing to point out here is that that law was there to point out the transgressions, to point out the fact that they're not able to earn their righteousness through their works until the offspring came. We talked about this yesterday. That offspring is Jesus Christ. So the law was in effect until Jesus Christ came in and was the fulfillment of that law. How did he fulfill the law? He fulfilled it because he put an end to that works-based righteousness and said, once again, we're going back to the way things were way back at the beginning with Abraham, where you are covered by grace. Your faith is counting as righteousness, and it's your faith that gives you that righteousness. Another thing to point out here is that we don't have a mediator right now. Moses had a mediator. That was the angel of the Lord, which is Jesus. But we go straight to Jesus. We go straight to him. We don't have to have anybody in between. We don't have to go to a priest and go to a confessional. We go straight to Jesus with our thoughts, our ideas, our prayers, confessing our sin. We do all that straight to Jesus Christ. So the question that often comes up, is the law then against God? And Paul comes right out and says, no, it is not against God. It was given so that people had a barometer, kind of like a way to measure whether or not they were sinning against God, and they could become aware of that sin. If that law could give you eternal life and could give you that righteousness, it would have stayed in place. There would have been no reason to pull it out. But Christ came in, and now we're covered with that grace, and we are saved by our faith. So there's a lot of debate about verse 20, and I'm going to read verse 20 again. Now, an intermediary implies more than one, but God is one. And I even read one commentator that said, and this was James Montgomery Boyce, he called it probably the most obscure verse in Galatians, if not the entire New Testament. The idea here is that the law was mediated in that God gave them the law, but man initiated it. Man went to God and said, we want a set of rules to follow. We want rules and regulations. And then God provided it. It was a two-way street. The two were involved and they worked together. Grace is not like that. Grace is flowing over us, and we don't have any part in that. It is not works-based. It is not based on anything we do. It's simply we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Our faith is what causes that righteousness, and that is part of God's gift of grace. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and keep walking the walk.